Good afternoon. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about the book of Judges. In our historical sequencing, we think of the book of Judges in terms of its chronology when it takes place in the literature of the Hebrew Bible, in the Tanakh. We think about it as immediately following the book of Joshua and before the book of Kings. So, what or who is a judge? An excellent question. The root for the word judge, or shofet, shoftim plural, shin fe tav, has a lot of meanings in its different uses in Tanakh. On one hand, it means to judge, to vindicate, to punish. On the other hand, to condemn, to punish, to decide controversy, to be part of disagreement or controversy, to govern and issue rules. So on one hand, all of these things seem like they are part of completely different words. But on the other hand, when you really think about it, all of these pieces are slices of the pie of what it means to be a leader, especially in the ancient world. Certainly a leader must govern and issue rules, but a leader must also be part of controversy and decide it. A leader must also engage in military-style disagreements and might have to judge or vindicate and punish in military action. A judge may also, or a leader may also have to judge and punish on civil matters, as it were. So all of this reflects the wide profile of what a judge did, and the idea that a judge's job could not be clearly condensed into a short job description. The title judge, shofet, comes from the Hebrew, what are all the judges that we meet in the book of Judges said to have done? They are introduced, many of them, having saved and judged, having saved Israel and judged Moab. So sometimes judged can be used as you waged war against him, you judged him. Having saved and judged Israel, so sometimes it's judged, like ruled over. Saved as he judged, saved and judged, etc., etc., etc. So, that is where their titles come from. The other piece of this chart I just want to point out to you is this is a chronological timeline of all the judges. I want to point out to you the two that matter to us today, Devorah and Samson. Devorah is one of the early judges. Samson effectively is the last judge that follows the typical narrative of a judge, because soon after, when we meet Eli and then Samuel, they are part of other narratives that their judging is kind of secondary to the other things that they do. Responsibilities may include military leading, commanding, ruling or passing judgment, communicating with or building a relationship with God, just to name a couple of options. So, the million-dollar question of the day. We are talking about Nevi'im, the books of prophets. So why the heck am I boring you with judges? Is a judge a prophet? Correct. A judge may or may not be a prophet. Who is the prophet, we must ask first. The Hebrew word for prophet is navi, as in Eliyahu HaNavi, right? It comes from an Akkadian word meaning to proclaim, to call, to summon. It is used in combination with Hebrew attributes like the Hebrew word for seer. In the Talmud, the rabbis agree that there are 48 men and 7 women who are prophets in the Tanakh, in Torah, Nevi'im, and Ketuvim. These prophets communicate directly with God, maybe dreams, maybe Moses, panim al panim, face to face, in visions, etc. They not only receive messages, but they are actually present them to the people. They must, to be a prophet, to be a Navi, they must proclaim or call. They must act on what they see. They enforce and enact God's mitzvot and commands, according to the Talmud, never ever adding or taking away from them, with the exception of Esther. Esther's big thing is that she added the commandment of Purim to the legislation of mitzvot. So, prophet sees message from God, proclaims to the people, creates change. What about judges? Why judges? So, in order to understand why judges matter, we must understand what governing structures were available to the Israelite people. Clearly, they settled the land and they said, we need a governing structure because we can't just be all willy-nilly freebie. That doesn't work. So, option A, kings. Deuteronomy makes very clear, no kings. Kings are dangerous. If after you've entered the land that your God Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh has assigned to you and take possession of it and settled in it, you decide, I will set a king over me, as do all the other nations about me. You shall be free to set a king over yourself, one chosen by your God. Be sure to set a king over yourself, one of your own people. You must not set a foreigner over you, one who is not in your kin. Moreover, he shall not keep many horses or send people back to Egypt or add to his horses. A lot of horses. Since Yud-Heh-Vav has warned you, you must not go back that way again, and he shall not have many wives, lest his heart go astray. Solomon. Nor shall he amass silver and gold to excess. When he is seated on his royal throne, he shall have a copy of this teaching, HaTorah, written for him on a scroll by the Levitical priests. Let it remain with him, and let him read it in all his life, so that he may learn to revere his God, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, to observe faithfully every word of this teaching as well as these laws. Thus he will not act haughtily toward his fellow or deviate from the instruction to the right or to the left, to the end that he and his descendants may long reign in the midst of Israel. So, kings. Okay, if you really want a king, okay, gesund, go get one. But, what's happening? So, sure. But with that king, you absolutely, positively must make sure the king has a lot of checks on his power, because it's dangerous. On the other hand, what about prophets? Prophets are maybe better. We learn elsewhere in Deuteronomy, from among your own, if you choose a prophet, there's a line above. Oh, no, there's not. From among your own people, your God, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, will raise up for you a prophet like myself. That is who you shall heed, says Moses. This is just what you asked of God, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, at Horeb, on the day of the assembly, that's right at the base of Mount Sinai, saying, let me not hear the voice of God, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, any longer, or see this wondrous fire anymore, lest I die. Whereupon Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh said to me, Moses, they have done well in speaking this. I will raise up for them from among their own people a prophet like yourself, in whose mouth I will put my words, who will speak to them all I command. Again, prophet, speaker. And anyone who fails to heed the words the prophet speaks in my name, I myself will call to accounts. But any prophet who presumes to speak in my name an oracle that I did not command her to be uttered, or who speaks in the name of other gods, that prophet shall die. So, on one hand, prophets, good. God condones, Moses condones, yay, prophets, cool. The people want prophets, they can have prophets. On the other hand, prophets can go astray. Maybe prophets go astray by amassing wealth, but That's fine because they're not ruling in such a way that wealth is prohibitive to their work. But if their duties as a prophet become compromised, if they say, okay, sure, for enough horses and foreign wives, I'll say something that God didn't actually say. Not going to end well for them. So prophets bear different dangers. Judges, they are not kings. They don't have this complete power that is so dangerous that they can just amass wealth and riches, at least in principle. They are not necessarily prophets. Devorah, Eli, and Samuel all are, but the rest of the judges are not. They're just kind of civilian leaders, as it were. Judges is an important book, though, because it demonstrates the strengths and the fallibility of human leadership. So keep that in mind. What ways do the judges succeed, and what ways do the judges demonstrate that, wow, humanity sucks? The whole book of Judges is very cyclical. People mess up. Almost every story of the Judges begins, the people did what was displeasing to the Lord their God. They're subject to some kind of foreign rule or an impending battle or something as punishment for their action. A judge arises and fixes the problems, and people live well. And then they fail again. So, the judge, as a figure, is able to create order and unity. But the judge is an ineffective leader because the changes, the order they create is not sustainable. A little historical context. So, we're talking 11th century-ish when this book takes place. The Mernafta stele from about 1210 is in hieroglyphics. You can see the real thing here. You can see the digitized version for reading. And it says right here, I'll read for you. Plundered is the Canaan with every evil. You see right there, every evil. Carried off as Ashkelon, seized upon as Gezer. Yanoam is made as that which does not exist. Israel is laid to waste. His seed is not. So this is huge if we're putting on our historian hats for a moment, to say that this is the first evidence we have that Israel actually exists for certain and is recognized by other nations. This was written by a pharaoh who was bragging about how much he conquered. Evidently, Israel wasn't laid to waste. His seed was not, because here we are. But the idea that we know Israel at this period in time was engaged in foreign conflicts is really important for saying, why did we need judges? We needed judges largely to deal with the foreign, to deal with the outside, to deal with the fact that a young people trying to settle in the promised land had a lot of adversaries. The other important historical context is that the Philistines arrive around 1190 before the Common Era. They are a persistent rival to the Israelites' conquest, not an imperial rival, like later we'll talk about the Persians and the Neo-Assyrians and the Neo-Babylonians. Those are all big empires against the small, little, mighty Israelites. Nor are they the native people, the Canaanites and the Hittites and the Shem, whatever, all these native people who did what was displeasing to the Lord and were meant to be wiped out. But another group of settlers. So in many ways, the Philistines are the most analogous to the Israelites in terms of status and power. Ultimately, the Philistines become the downfall of the institution of the judgeships, as we'll learn about with Samson. So, that's the Judges. A note on chronology. may or may not present an actual chronological history, traditionally credited to being written by Samuel at the end of the Rule of Judges as like a, hey, we should preserve this, I'm going to write a book. Likely drafted after 722 when the northern kingdom of Israel fell. There's scholarly debate, is this part of the Deuteronomic history? Some say it's very consistent with the ideals, the principles, the writing style of Deuteronomy, of Joshua, and is totally part of it. Some say not. So, just worth knowing. Now, we are going to talk about the story of Devorah. I want to point out a couple places. Ramah and Bethel. It says Devorah right here. She had a palm tree that was right here on a little hill, and we're going to talk about that. And then Mount Tabor, the Wadi Kishon, Haroshet Hagoyim, all places that are going to become important in a moment. But to hear Devorah's story, I think the way we need to start with is a song by the one and only Debbie Friedman. There you have it, the story of Devorah in song form. I want to now give you the story of Devorah in textual form from the book of Judges. So Devorah's story is essentially kind of told in two ways. Chapter 4 of the book of Judges is the story, the narrative of Devorah and Barak and all of them in this battle I'm about to tell you about. Chapter 5 is what's called Devorah's Song. Cleverly, it was not inspired by Debbie Friedman. She took the concept from Tanakh. And Devorah's Song is a victory song. So we're going to talk about that as well. So, to begin, the Israelites once again did what was offensive to God, Ehud now being dead. And God surrendered them to King Jabin of Canaan, who reigned in Hazor. His army commander was Sisera, whose base was Haroshet Goyim. The Israelites cried out to God, for he had 900 iron chariots and had oppressed Israel ruthlessly for 20 years. Because this was after the book of Ruth, so there was no more Ruth. Devorah, this translation renders wife of Lapidot, was a prophet. She led Israel at that time. This verse is a very complicated verse for many reasons. Devorah, Eshet Lapidot, could mean Devorah, wife of Lapidot, or, as I prefer to render it, a woman of the torch, because Lapidot means torch, and Eshet is woman of. So a woman of Lapidot, they were married. Woman of torches was a prophet. Also a complicated phrase. They call her Isha Nuviah. So that means woman, female prophet, or woman prophetess. Little overkill. She led Israel at the time. She used to sit under the palm tree of Devorah between Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim. And the Israelites would come to her for decisions. So, Ramah, Bethel, Devorah's palm tree. So, as a judge, we know one thing about what she does. She hears decisions and helps people solve problems. She summoned Barak, son of Avinoam, of Kedesh in Naphtali, and said to him, "The Eternal your God has commanded, go, march up to Mount Tabor and take with you 10,000 men of Naphtali and Zebulun. And I will draw Sisera, Jabin's army commander, with his chariots and his troops, toward you to the Wadi Kishon. I will deliver him into your hands." But Barak said to her, "If you will go with me, I will go. If not, I will not go." "Very well," she said. "I will go with you," she answered. "However, there will be no glory for you in the course you are taking. For then God will deliver Sisera into the hands of a woman." So Devorah went with Barak and Kedesh. So I love this part of the story for a couple of reasons. Part of which is Devorah as the leader gives insight, was aware that as a leader, sometimes it was her obligation to step up and to lead in the front, and sometimes it was her obligation to empower others, to say, "Barak, you need to lead this." But at the end of the day, she knew what had to get done. Later on in the story, Sisera was informed that Barak, son of Abinoam, had gone up to Mount Tabor. So Sisera ordered all his chariots, 900 iron chariots, and all his troops he had to move from Haroshet Goyim into the Wadi Kishon. Wadi is a sunken riverbed. Not a great place to be. You know, the whole Star Wars, "It's over, Anakin, I have the high ground," like that. Then Devorah said to Barak, "Up! This is the day on which God will deliver Sisera into your hands. God is marching before you. Go!" So Barak charged down Mount Tabor, followed by 10,000 men, and God threw Sisera and all of his chariots and army into a panic before the onslaught of Barak. Sisera leaped from his chariot and fled on foot. Barak pursued all the chariots and soldiers as far as Haroshet Goyim. All of Sisera's soldiers fell by the sword. Not one was left. Not one except good old Sisera. Trouble's brewing for him, though. He had fled on foot to the tent of Yael, wife of Hever, Hebrew word for friend, by the way, the Kenite. For there was a friendship, Hever, between King Jabin of Hazor and the family of Heber the Canaanite. So not a Jew. Yael came out to greet Sisera and said to him, "Come in, my lord. Come here. Do not be afraid." So he entered her tent and she covered him with a blanket. He said to her, "Please let me have some water. I'm thirsty." She opened a skin of milk, gave him some to drink, and she covered him again. He said to her, "Stand at the entrance of the tent. If anyone comes and asks you if there's anyone here, say no." Then Yael, wife of Hever, took a tent pin and grasped the mallet. When he was fast asleep from exhaustion, she approached him stealthily and drove the pin right through the temple of his head till it went down to the ground. Thus, he died. Just a kind of important side plot in the story of Deborah, all about powerful women. So, moving into chapter 5 of the book of Judges, the Song of Deborah. I want to point out a couple things. And as I'm reading from it, think to yourself, what is the genre of the song? What does it seem like? What is it trying to accomplish? On that day, Deborah and Barak, son of Abinoam, sang, "When locks go untrimmed in Israel, when people dedicate themselves, bless God. Hear, O kings, give ear, O potentates." That's a good word. "I will sing to God, will hymn the eternal, the God of Israel. O God, when you came forth from Seir, advanced from the country of Edom, the earth trembled. The heavens dripped. Yeah, the clouds dripped water. The mountains quaked because of God. Yon Sinai, because of God, the God of Israel. In the days of Shamgar, son of Anath, in the days of Yael, caravans ceased, and wayfarers went by roundabout paths. Deliverance ceased in Israel, till you arose, O Deborah." Remember, she's saying this. "Arose, O mother in Israel." So you get it? Arise, arise, Deborah. Yeah, a mother in Israel. Yeah, that's why it's there. So, when they chose new gods, was there a fighter in the gates? No shield or spear was seen among 40,000 in Israel. My heart is with Israel's leaders, but with the dedicated of the people. Bless God. Later on in the song, louder than the sound of arches, there among the watering places, let them chant God's gracious acts, the gracious deliverance of Israel. Then did God's people march down to the gates. Arise, arise, O Deborah, arise, arise, and sing a song, or strike up a chant. Arise, O Barak, take your captives, O son of Avinoam. Then was the remnant made victor over the mighty. God's people won my victory over the warriors. Go back. So, may all your enemies perish, O God, but may your friends be as the sun rising in the might. And the story of Deborah ends with a very important line. And the land was tranquil for 40 years. So, two things to think about. Genre of the song, it's a song of gratitude, right? It is, in all senses, saying, bless God. Thank you, God, for what just happened. Thank you, God, for the victory. Thank you, God, that Yael was the right person in the right place at the right time. Thank you, God, that we as a people have been able to be dedicated to God. That when locks go untrimmed in Israel, when people are dedicated to the ideals of Torah of God, thank you. Thank you for what we've brought to the table. Thank you for what you've done for us. Gratitude. And I think that that is the very reason this line, "and the land was tranquil for 40 years, doesn't come after the narrative, but comes after the song. It's a statement that there's causation. Peace, shalom, comes from gratitude. Often I think of gratitude and peace as a scale, one way or the other. Peace, shalom, wholeness, is something I consider to be aspirational. Look for a moment at our prayer for peace in the morning, Sim Shalom, written here. Grant peace, goodness, and blessing, grace, kindness, and mercy to us and to all your people Israel. Yada, 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 yada. You can read it yourself. But I want to show you. Truly, through the light of your presence, Adonai, our God, you gave us a Torah of life, the love of kindness, justice, and blessing, mercy, life, and peace. All right, there's an acknowledgement of all the things that have already happened. May you see fit to bless your people Israel at all times, at every hour, with your peace. Praised are you, Adonai, who blesses your people Israel with peace. So, future, who blesses. May you see fit. Would we all agree that this is aspirational? Yes. So, peace, shalom, wholeness, if we just pray for it, never comes. Peace is juxtaposed, is balanced with gratitude, hakarat hatov, Hebrew for recognizing the good, naming, calling out the good. So our prayer, Modim Anachnu Lach, which comes directly before peace in our concluding prayers of the Amidah, is all about that. We acknowledge with thanks that you, Adonai, are God and God of our ancestors forever. You are the rock of our lives, the shield of our salvation in every generation. Let us thank you and praise you for our lives which are in your hand, for our souls which are in your care, for your miracles that we experience every day, and for your wondrous deeds and favors at every time of day, evening, morning, and noon. O good one, whose mercies never end, O compassionate one, whose kindness never fails, we forever put our hope in you. And I think that that is particularly important to me because these two are kind of saying the same thing. The prayer for peace is saying, we hope that there's going to be peace, and we're grateful for all these things you've done for us, helping us to move towards peace. On the other hand, here it's saying, we are so grateful for all these things, and because of that, we have hope. We put our hope in you. We hope for a new day, a better day. Gratitude and peace are a balancing act. And for Devorah, she creates peace through a great victory, but then through teaching the people to learn from the victory. The victory came because we were grateful, because we followed God's rules, because we lived ethically. So, by contrast, meet Samson. Samson's story is kind of famous. Samson was born to Manoach as a Nazarite. The Nazarite vow from Numbers includes, of course, not cutting hair, not consuming grapes, etc., etc., etc. Samson got himself in a lot of trouble. He had a hot head. He married a Philistine woman. Bad idea, especially if you're a judge, a leader of Israel trying to fight the Philistines. Already created drama. Then there was an incident with a riddle, and people found out, and that made him really mad that his wife gave away the answer to the riddle. So he went and he went on a stabbing spree, and then he went away, and then his wife married another man, and murdered many people. And then there's another incident where he slayed 1,000 Philistine men with the bone of an ass. A donkey, to be clear. Then comes Delilah. So the story of Samson and Delilah is kind of famous. Of course, Delilah is a prostitute who tries multiple times to deliver Samson into the hands of the Philistines. They have this exchange multiple times where Delilah says, Samson, what is the source of your strength? I've just got to know. And Samson will say things like, well, if you would tie me up with the strongest ropes you have, that'll make me weak. So then she does it, and then he breaks out of it every time she calls the Philistines to come get him. Now, eventually, she said to him, "How can you say you love me when you don't confide in me?" This now makes 3 times that you've deceived me and haven't told me what makes you so strong. Finally, after she had nagged him and pressed him constantly, he was wearied to death. Okay, just quick check-in. He was such a strong man, was able to kill 1,000 Philistine men without an emotional issue, but she nagged him and pressed him constantly that he was wearied to death. Sounds like there's something he wanted from her that he wasn't getting. And he confided everything in her. He said to her, "No razor has ever touched my head, for I have been a Nazarite to God since I was in my mother's womb. If my hair were cut, my strength would leave me, and I should become as weak as an ordinary man." So he made a pretty dumb decision telling her that, because he already knew what she was about to do, but he really wanted something from her. Don't know what that could be. The Philistines seized him and gouged out his eyes after she cut his hair. They brought him down to Gaza and shackled him in bronze fetters, and he became a mill slave in the prison. Oh, and by the way, I did not provide a map for this, but we're talking Gaza and Ashkelon, which is exactly where the Gaza Strip is along the Mediterranean Sea in our modern geopolitical conversations. He became a mill slave in the prison. After his hair was cut off, it began to grow back, because that's what hair does. Now, the lords of the Philistines gathered to offer a great sacrifice to their god Dagon and to make merry. They chanted, "Our God has delivered into our hands our enemy Samson." When the people saw him, they sang praises to their God, chanting, "Our God has delivered into our hands the enemy who devastated our land and slew so many of us." As their spirits rose, they said, "Call Samson here and let him dance for us." That always ends well. Samson was fetched from the prison, and he danced for them. Then they put him between the pillars. And Samson said to the boy who was leading him by the hand, "Let go of me and let me feel the pillars that the temple rests upon, that I may lean on them." Now, the temple was full of men and women. Again, the Philistine temple, not the temple. All the lords of the Philistines were there, and there were some 3,000 men and women on the roof watching Samson dance. Then Samson called, "O sovereign God, please remember me and give me strength just this once, O God, to take revenge of the Philistines, if only for one of my 2 eyes." Because an eye for an eye, the world goes blind. He embraced the 2 middle pillars of the temple that the temple rested upon, one with his right arm and one with his left, and he leaned against them. Samson cried, "Let me die with the Philistines." He pulled with all his might. The temple came crashing down on the lords of all the people in it. Those who were slain by him as he died outnumbered those who had been slain by him when he lived. His brothers and all his father's household came down and carried him up and buried him in the tomb of his father Manoah between Zorah and Eshtaol. He had led Israel for 20 years. So, it was the ultimate humbling experience was Samson's journey, right? Because we first meet him, he's so bold, and I can go marry a Philistine, And Samson's journey was a journey of finding humility, learning that maybe you can't do all the things that you thought you could. Maybe you're not so great at everything. Lessons of Samson. Number 1, following one's heart and one's eyes and lustful urge versus gratitude. I feel every time I read the story of Samson, it strikes me that no matter how much he gets, it's never enough. It's never enough for him to have just killed 1,000 Philistine men. No, he needs more. It's never enough for him to have married a Philistine woman. Now he needs Delilah. It's never enough for him. So I often ask, how would an attitude of gratitude have shaped Samson's relationship to the Philistines, to his work? Would it have made him a calmer, more level-headed person? I'd like to think yes. I don't know. Does the institution of the judgeship work? Hold that thought. But he messed up. Samson and peace. Does Samson seek peace and pursue it in the way Devorah does, through gratitude, through her personal practice? And I would argue, no, absolutely not. Samson does not possibly seek out peace. He seeks out an illusion of peace through his battles with the Philistines. He knows that they are an enemy, they're a problem for him. So he seeks out a temporary peace, but he doesn't think about long-term pursuit of peace. So, today's million-dollar question. Were the judges good leaders? And I will answer the question, yes and. The judges were as good a leader as they could have been in many ways. The judges show a range of human leadership. The judges show that when a human is able to seek out God, listen to God, and abide by the rules given to them, as Devorah does, for instance, a judge can be a very successful leader who leads to peace, who leads the people back to the right path. By contrast, a judge like Samson, who solely allows the values that govern his life and his leadership to be his own personal wants and his manly urges, then he can never be successful. Yet, this is not an exclusive problem to judges. It applies to kings as well. It applies to really any leader. So are judges bad leaders? I'd say no worse than anyone else. Is the institution of judgeship effective? Evidently not. So on that note, that is what I've got for you today.